The sinking of Port Royal, the wickedest city on earth.
Port Royal was famous in the Caribbean for being a pirate haven, but it sank into the sea in 1692. In the 19th century, famous author Howard Pyle wrote the Book of Pirates, and in it was his depiction of Port Royal in 1665.
The town of Port Royal, in the year 1665, came all the pirates and buccaneers, and men shouted and swore and gambled, and poured out money like water, and then maybe wound up their merrymaking by dying of fever. Everywhere you might behold a multitude of painted women and pirates, gaudy with red scarfs and gold braid, and all sorts of odds and ends of foolish finery, all fighting and gambling and bartering for that ill-gotten treasure of the berobbed Spaniard.
Port Royal is a town located at the end of the Palisadoes at the mouth of Kingston Harbor. It was party central for buccaneers and was situated at the perfect spot at the perfect time. It was founded in 1494 by the Spanish and was in those times the largest city in the Caribbean. The English captured Jamaica from the Spanish in 1655. They noticed the port's strategic potential at the entrance to Kingston Harbor and invested in strengthening its defenses. Port Royal's position at the heart of the Caribbean, surrounded by the Spanish Main, put it in a striking distance of the main shipping routes between the New World and Europe, making it the buccaneering capital of the world. The prosperity of Port Royal was not only through legitimate trade, but by the escapades of pirates like privateer and politician Henry Morgan, who operated out of Port Royal during the 1600s. Henry Morgan used the town as his base and launched his attacks against Spanish cities. It was his successful campaigns against the Spanish that earned him political power in Jamaica, where he served as governor and lieutenant governor. Morgan died rich in 1688. He was buried in a lead coffin in the Palisadoes Cemetery in Jamaica. Morgan turned Port Royal into one of the richest ports in the Caribbean, with brick houses of 2 to 4 stories, gambling dens and taverns, pipe water and brothels. The Catholic Church condemned it as the wickedest town in Christendom for its accommodation and harboring of pirates who were working for the Queen of England and tolerance of the 7 deadly sins. Jamaica was by this time a British colony, surrounded by Spanish and Portuguese property. For most of this time, Spain and England were at war. Port Royal was a safe, protected harbor with a good draught and centrally located along the trade routes between Panama and Spain. On the morning of June 7, 1692, the church rector of Port Royal, Jamaica, was running late for lunch. A friend entreated him to delay just a while longer. It was a small choice that saved his life. The ground began to roll and rumble. Earthquakes on the island usually passed quickly, but this quaking only increased in intensity. The 2 men soon heard the church tower collapse into rubble. The rector sprinted outside, racing for open ground. By his description, the land split open, swallowing crowds of people and homes in one gulp, and then sealing closed. The sky darkened to red. Mountains crumbled in the distance, and glaciers of water exploded from the seams ripped in the earth. He turned to see a great wall of seawater swelling high above the town. In a letter describing the disaster, the shocked rector wrote,
"In the space of 3 minutes, Port Royal, the fairest town of all the English plantations, the best emporium and mart of this part of the world, exceeding in its riches, plentiful of all good things, was shaken and shattered to pieces."
A tsunami followed the earthquake, which scientists believe measured 7.5 on the Richter scale, making it a major event. By the time the catastrophe had ended, Most of Port Royal, including the cemetery where Henry Morgan was buried, lay beneath the watery depths. As many as 2,000 people were killed immediately and thousands died soon after. Due to its promiscuous and sexual reputation, Port Royal faced what to many must have looked like the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. It certainly felt that way to the church rector. In letters, he confessed that he longed to escape the scene of the disaster, but his conscience drove him to stay, venturing into the town day after day to pray with survivors in a tent pitched amid their flattened houses, which were looted nightly by lewd rogues.
I hope by this terrible judgment, God will make them reform their lives. For there was not a more ungodly people on the face of the earth.
The support of piracy was greatly determined by politics. In a lot of instances, those charged formally with piracy were executed on Gallows Point in Port Royal. In the early 18th century, Jamaica's new governor, Nicholas Laws, brought in the English Navy to hunt down pirates operating in Port Royal. Local support for piracy began to die out after the capture and execution of several notorious pirates and their crews, including Calico Jack, Anne Bonny, Mary Read, and Charles Vane. Thank you for watching Jamaican True Stories. Like, follow, and share for more.